We've been fighting a long time, and we have all lost so very much, so many loved ones gone. But you are not alone. There are pockets of resistance all around the planet. We are at the brink. You have no idea how important you are. If you're listening to this, you are the resistance.
Ave Maria Stella, Dei Mater Alma, atque semper Virgo, Felix Stelico.
Welcome everybody, Steve with Sense Fidelity coming at you with Father Laurent Demets. Did I say that right?
Hello. Yes, Demets, yes.
And he's in Vietnam, so I have to say, good morning, Vietnam!
Actually, it's evening. It's morning in the US, but here now it's evening.
Yes. Well, I was just doing it for the movie. I couldn't help myself.
I know.
So anyways, we're talking about a saint that many people may not know about. He was a martyr in Vietnam. He was the original Little Flower. There's a great painting I saw of an altarpiece of him handing a flower to the Little Flower, St. Therese. But St. Théophane, his bishop, by the way, has a great motto. It was, intoxicate me with the cross. And his other one, when dealing with missionaries' morale in difficult times, was 3 cheers for joy anyways. This was an area that had a ton of martyrs. So, Father, welcome.
Well, thank you very much, and I'm glad to be here with you today to speak about Saint Théophane Vénard, who is one of my favorite saints, and he's not the only one reason, but one of the reasons I am in Vietnam now. So.
Yeah, I've met guys that are in the that's with the order in the Fraternity of St. Peter that became seminarians or priests because of people like Father de Schmidt. But you're the first one I met that was because of St. Théophane.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us a little bit about him.
Well, I discovered Saint Théophane Vénard when I was in the seminary in Vigratsbad, in the seminary of the Fraternity of St. Peter. And I heard about him first time, in fact, when I read the life of Saint Thérèse of Lisieux, because he was the favorite saint of Saint Thérèse, and I wanted to know more about him, so I read his life. And since at this time I was already interested in Vietnam, so I was very impressed by his life. I would say a short life, because he died martyr. I think he was just 31 years old, if I remember well. But he was, I would say, a simple soul. This is why Saint Therese liked him. When she read about him, she said, wow, his soul is like my soul. And Saint Therese of Lisieux is famous now all over the world, but not too many people, as you say, know Saint Théophane Vénard. We know him more in France because he was French, but in other countries he's not very famous. And yet he has the same soul as Saint Therese of Lisieux, which is a simplicity, the spiritual way of a spiritual childhood. And he gave everything, even his own life, for Christ, like all the martyrs. So that makes him a beautiful figure, a beautiful saint to follow, and I'm sure he can inspire many people today. So, but before talking about Saint Théophane Vénard, if you want, I can do a little background about the Seminary of the Foreign Mission in Vietnam.
Yeah, go for it.
Because he was a priest of the mission of the Society of the Foreign Mission in Paris. So it was founded in the 1663, if I remember well, in France, by 2 bishops, Bishop Palu and Bishop Lambert de la Motte. Also, Zhao technically is not one of the founders, but Alexandre de Rhodes, who was a missionary priest in Vietnam, played an important role to the foundation. And also, maybe you are more concerned in the US, because there was also, he was not yet a bishop, I think at this time he was a priest, but Francois De Laval, who became the first bishop in North America, the bishop of Quebec City, because he wanted, as a priest, he wanted to go to Vietnam with Alexandre de Rhodes, and I guess God wanted him to be in North America, where he did a wonderful job. By the way, I was in Quebec for 5 years. I discovered also this great missionary bishop. But I would say it's the same spirit that inspired all of them, of these priests and bishop and missionary, to go all over the world to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ. This first bishop, especially Lambert de la Motte, spent many years in Vietnam. There he founded some religious communities, especially les Amants de la Croix in French, religious community, which is the more ancient, the oldest religious community in Vietnam. There are still today many sisters. It's a community of sisters. There are many hundred, many thousand of sisters from this community today in Vietnam. Then I'm not going to go through the whole history of the mission, otherwise we will need many hours, but I'm skipping a little bit to go to Bishop Pignot de Béhaine. It was a little bit later, end of the 18th century. He was a French bishop of the Foreign Mission in Vietnam. Interesting life also, because he became a close friend of the king of Vietnam, the Emperor Gia Long, who was the first king of the Nguyen dynasty. And Bishop Pignot de Béhaine had a great expectation. Of course, he prayed and hoped for the conversion of the king Gia Long to become Christian. It never happened. But he brought his son, the Prince of Vietnam, who was a young boy at this time. He was 10, 12 years old, something like that. So he brought him to Versailles, where he met the king Louis XVI. And he signed a treaty between France and Vietnam, between Louis XVI and Emperor Gia Long. Unfortunately, because of the French Revolution and for many other reasons, these treaties was never applied. But yet, it's still interesting. Unfortunately, the following emperor of Vietnam did not have the same sympathy for the Westerners and for the Christians, and then start a time of terrible persecution for the Catholics in Vietnam. So in the 19th century, this is when we meet Jean-Théophane Vénard, because he was born in I forget the day, 1829. And when he was 9 years old, he read about the martyr of Jean-Charles Cornet, who was another priest of the Foreign Mission. Terrible martyrdom, because he was beheaded, and after they cut all his body in little pieces. But young Théophane Vénard, 9 years old, he read that, and at 9 years old, he said, wow, I also want to go to the Tonkin, which is the north of Vietnam, and I want to die as a martyr. So that was his dream as a child, and I don't think too many children have this kind of dream, but God granted his wish, and a few years later, he would die as a martyr. So Théophane Vénard was born in a little town of west of France, and so he had this call to the vocation to be a missionary as a young child. He joined the minor seminary. Then after a while, when he was in the seminary, he was thinking maybe more about becoming a diocesan priest, especially when he was a teenager. There is always a kind of crisis. I mean, if all the teenagers are this kind of crisis, that would be great, I think. But instead of thinking about missionaries, I just a diocesan priest, which is fine also. But then later, his vocation to be a missionary became stronger, and he was sure that his call from God. So he left the seminary of Poitiers, I think it was, and went to Paris to join the seminary of the Foreign Mission. And there, so he was. It was quite something, the seminary of the Foreign Mission at this time, because they call that in French, they call Polytechnique du Martyr, the Polytechnic School of Martyr, because you had a lot of chance to end as a martyr, and yet it did not stop many young men to join the seminary, to give their life to Christ. And after his ordination, so Théophane Vénard left. He went to Asia. At this time, it was quite an adventure to travel from Europe to Asia. I think it took like 22 months to join. He did not arrive in Vietnam first. I think it stayed in Hong Kong, I think, if my memory is good.
Right.
But he had troubles with Chinese language, Mandarin or Cantonese, whatever it was. Of course, he wanted to go to North Vietnam. And after a while, his superior sent him to Vietnam. So he was very happy because for him, that was the most beautiful mission of the foreign mission in Asia. When he arrived in Vietnam, it was a time of, it was more peaceful, not too many persecution. There was some persecution some years before, but when he arrived, it was a better situation. He was very impressed by what he saw. He called that, he spoke about the beauty of the mission, the beauty because of its organization. There was already some bishops and priests, not yet the diocese, because before it's the Vatican, it's the Pope who created the diocese, but before it's what we call the apostolic administration or vicariat in French. But there was already some bishops, some priests, and the goal, the purpose of the foreign mission was always to of course, to convert the people to the Catholic faith, and then to have a local clergy. So they had some Vietnamese young men in their seminary, and in fact, a few months after he arrived, there was an ordination. Since there was no persecution at this time, they can have a beautiful solemn liturgy with 2 bishops, 4 French priests, and they ordained 26 Vietnamese priests. And there was, since it was a peaceful time, there was even some representative of the King of Vietnam. So you can imagine how it was, in North Vietnam, the ceremony with 100 soldiers, an elephant, and everything. I guess it was quite impressive. But unfortunately, a few years later, the persecution started again, and Saint Théophane Vénard had to hide himself for 3 years. And you can imagine how difficult it was because he had to hide like many other priests or Christians. They make a kind of a false wall in the house, and basically he spent 3 years between 2 walls. He could leave only in the evening when it was necessary to administer the sacraments and so forth. Finally, get caught. And it's beautiful because we know all the story because he wrote letters to his family and to his friends. For that, we know very well. And also, we have the testimony of other priests and of Vietnamese Catholics. Quite a touching life. So, and he was trialed by the great Mandarin, the representative of the king in Hanoi, north. And of course, we have some part of the trial. For instance, the Mandarin asked him if he's not afraid of death, because like they used to do during the persecution, they told the Christian, I say, you can leave, you just have to walk on the cross. Unfortunately, like it happened to all the persecutions in the early church, some unfortunately they denied Christ and walked on the cross, but there are also many Christians who were faithful and who died. We don't know exactly how many Christians died, but certainly more than 100,000, maybe 2 or even 300,000. Only 117 are canonized, but there were many thousands of Christians who gave their life for Christ. And Saint Théophane Vénard said, I'm a Christian. I came here in the name of Christ, of Jesus Christ, so I'm not afraid of death. I do not deserve to die, but if you decide to kill me, I accept that. I accept death, and I will offer it for Vietnam. So it was a beautiful testimony of faith that he gave, and finally he was sentenced to death. It took some time because before he was put to death, they needed the approbation of the king. It took 2 months, And during this time, so he can have contact with some other people. He could send letters, especially one of his last letters, I think his last letters to his family. It's really beautiful because it's like if you read Saint Teresa of Lisieux, it's really the same spirit. It says that I am like a flower of spring that will be picked by God, and my pilgrimage on earth will end, but I will be in heaven for God. So, and he wrote to his family to not cry, but to rather to rejoice. And finally, the king's approbation arrived, and he was sentenced. He was executed on February the 2nd, which is a beautiful day because it's the purification of the Blessed Virgin Mary and the candle mass, on this day, the day when we sing Lumen ad Revelationem Gentium. And I think it was truly a light, as Jesus said in the Gospel, the light of the world. So it was pretty a light for the church in Vietnam, and until today, because it still had the Vietnamese, as the Catholic Vietnamese, still have great veneration for Jean-Théophane Vénard. So it's a short summary of his life. There would be many things to do, but at least an idea of what he did to the people who do not know him.
Yeah, I mean, if you guys want more, you get the book, The Modern Martyr. I mean,
yeah, exactly. I read it in English when I was in the States. I spent 8 years in the States.
Yeah, it has his letters and all that, a little more biography. And I think before you guys they had 5 attempts to cut his head off. But
yes, because the executioners were, I think he was drunk or something like that. So it took 5, he had to do 5 times before I could behead him. So he did not die on the first hit. So I guess he had time to offer and to suffer also with Christ. But he was prepared for that, because there is a story, when he was sometime when he was in the still hidden in the house. Sometime he was praying the breviary, and the people could see him. Sometimes he just raised the head like that when he was praying. And some people ask him, I say, why do you raise your head like that? And he answered something like that, well, I have to be prepared if I have to give my life for Christ. If they want to behead me, I have to be prepared. So, he was, I mean, since he was 9 years old, he was preparing himself for this moment. So,
Yeah, most 9-year-olds are thinking about being astronauts or ball players. Yeah, I think they caught him in towards the end of the year, say like November, December. But they had him in a 6.5 foot by 3 foot cage for 3 months.
Cage, so which was a kind of a humiliation because the guard all around. But like it happened many times in the history of the church, when you have a saint with prisoner like that, especially someone with about to die as a martyr. So some people, especially the captain of the guard, was very impressed and moved by him, and he tried to make his life better. But some other guard mocked him, and so Saint Joan of Arc also knew the same thing when she was in prison. So it happened to my friend. I guess it's part of the cross that the saint, and especially the martyr, have to carry. But it was what impressed most of the people is that during all his time in prison until the day of his death, he was joyful. He went to his death singing the Magnificat, I think it was. Like Father Cornet before him, when he died, he was singing the Salve Regina. We can think also about the Blessed Carmelite of Compiègne during the French Revolution, also. Because the death of the faithful Christian can be tragic, of course, but it's not something sad. If we have faith, if we believe in God, giving our life for God is beautiful and finally even a joyful thing. So, but we need faith to understand that, because to the world it does not make sense.
That's what goes back. I open up with the bishop saying 3 cheers for joy, because I think Théophane was sick as a dog when they thought he was going to die. And he says something about, I can't breathe, I can't go on, but 3 cheers for joy anyways.
Oh yes, in French they used to say "Vive la joie quand même." So long live the joy, whatever. I don't know how to translate in good English, but cheer for joy. Yes, exactly. Because even before the persecution start again, it was difficult. Just imagine, even without the persecution, Vietnam at this time. Nowadays, it's okay. I have the air conditioning in my room. Okay, but imagine it's a tropical country. This time, the medicine was not. They didn't have antibiotic or whatever. So, in fact, many people just died of a sickness. A tropical sickness. So it was hard. And Théophane Vénard was sick many times. People thought he would die. There was difficulties to preach the gospel everywhere. So being a missionary, I guess it has never been easy, whatever is the century. But in the 19th century in Vietnam, it was certainly not easy. But all these missionaries always were filled with joy, and they say, okay, we know that it's hard, but we have been prepared for that in the seminary. We knew it from the beginning, so it's not a surprise. And which is not new. We can, if you read St. Paul, exactly the same thing. So we have to carry the cross, and that's it. So, it's quite inspiring, because especially nowadays, because I'm thinking for myself as a priest in mission, also in Vietnam. But it was also the case when I was a parish priest in Canada or in the US or in France. I say, well, what can we do to bring the gospel to the people? Of course, the situation in the 21st century in our modern society is not the same. But basically, whatever is the location and whatever is the time, I think we don't have to find new things or new ideas. If we want to bring the gospel, first we have to live it ourselves and to be attached to Jesus Christ, and to be the salt of the earth and the light of the world. And when you read the life of Saint Théophane Vénard, especially when he was still in the seminary, you can see that he was preparing himself for this mission. When I was thinking this afternoon about preparing this talk, I have a quote from Bishop Fenelon. He was a famous French bishop in the 17th century, and he said he preached one day to the mission, to the chapel of the mission in Paris, and he was talking about the missionary. He said, "These are the new conqueror of the world, but their only weapon is the cross of Jesus Christ." And yes, the weapon of the missionaries and of every Christian, I would say, not only every Christian should be a missionary in a way or another. We can be missionary in our families, at work, even in our parish, everywhere. But of course, the missionary in the strict sense of the word, those who left their country to preach the gospel far away.
Yep.
We have, if we need a secret how to be a good missionary, the secret is the cross of Christ. That's it. Everything is there.
Yeah, because St. Therese is the patron saint of missionaries, and she never went to a missionary.
Yes, Saint Therese of Lisieux, of course, she's the patron saint of the mission. So, she wanted to follow Saint Théophane Vénard because she asked to go to the Carmel in Vietnam. And in fact, it was granted. She had the permission to go, but she was sick, and then finally she died, so it never happened. But her dream was to still be a Carmelite sister in a cloister, but she was so close after Théophane Vénard, she really wanted to be in the Carmel of Vietnam, in Vietnam. So. And yet behind the cloister of her monastery in Lisieux, she became the patron saint of the mission with Francois Xavier. Francois Xavier, okay, it makes sense. He was probably a missionary, but it shows that even the monks, those who have more a monastic vocation, should be missionary, and lay people, even if you are married, even if you are a family, of course, your first duty is to take care of your family, but you can still be a missionary same time, maybe a missionary to your own family, to your children, but so we should always pray for the diffusion of the gospel in the world, and that's the concern of all the faithful.
That was the thing with him. They said that he was very zealous for the conversion of souls out there, and I think he wrote to his sister how we need more of this. There's souls are being lost like snowflakes, or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, when you read on what they were taught in the seminary, they did not leave their country, their family, which was a real sacrifice, because nowadays, even when you are a missionary in Asia or Africa, we have plane. I can be in France tomorrow if I want. So, but at this time, when they left, they knew they would never come back. So it was quite a sacrifice, and we have many stories. It's very touching when he left his his little town in the west of France to join the seminary in Paris. When he said goodbye, farewell to his father, to his family. So, they were not robots or people with no feelings, they had a certain sadness, but on the other hand, the joy of following Christ was higher than the sadness they had to leave their family. But why did they leave their country, their families, their friends? It's to save souls. That's the main reason. That was not to make social activities or, I'm not judging or mocking or whatever other reason, but nowadays when you hear the modern speech in the church, I say, okay, you hear people, they do a lot of social activities, which is good. Again, I'm not saying it's bad, but we should not forget the main reason is to save souls. That's the main reason. And because otherwise, why would you give your life? As the priest, I don't want to die just to build a school. It's beautiful to build a school, but maybe not to the point to give my life for that. I have to die, I hope, for Christ and for the salvation of souls. And that was really the unique reason, their motivation. We go all over the world to save the souls. Bishop Fenelon, after I don't have the whole speech, the whole sermon he gave, but he said, yes, they leave they want to conquer the world, but for Christ, with for the only weapon, the cross of Jesus Christ, to bring the light of Christ in the darkness. Because for a faithful disciple of Christ, it's in the Gospel of St. John, the letter of St. John, there is a light which is given by God, and without God, we are in the darkness. And we do the work of Satan, and that was pretty obvious for many generations of Christians. Nowadays, we are more in a kind of we have to speak with other religion. Okay, why not? But kind of a dialogue just in order to speak and to. No, we are here to spread the gospel and to convert. To be instruments of the conversion, because that's very important. We do not convert people. It's only the grace of God. But if we can be the instrument of the grace of God for the conversion of the pagan, of the people from other religion, yes. Because, it's still, even if many Catholics do not know about that or do not believe that, but it's still a dogma of the church. There is no salvation outside of the Catholic Church. This is why the church is missionary from the very beginning. Jesus sent his apostles to all the nation, not to dialogue or whatever, but to preach and to baptize. And that will be the mission of the church until the end of time, to preach and to baptize. When we preach, if some hear the voice of God and ask for baptism, yes, okay, we baptize, we give the life of God, and then we help them to grow, because baptism is just the beginning. We help them to grow their spiritual life, to become closer to our Lord Jesus Christ, to become saints, because once we are baptized, we are all called to become saints, whatever is our vocation, and that it's quite a spiritual adventure, So it should keep all the priests and all the faithful of the world, that should keep us busy for the rest of our life, We have to do.
Yeah, last time I checked, the entire planet isn't Catholic, so we got some work to do.
Oh, yes, a lot of work. And that's why, and today for me, it's my motivation because, in Vietnam, today, Vietnam, it's around 90 millions of people. I think they are like 7 million of Catholics, so it's still a minority. But it's a strong minority, the seminary, it's not like in Western countries, the seminaries are full. The religious community, they have many vocations. They build a big, beautiful church, so there is the church is alive. But, 7 million, it means there are still 83 million of non-Catholics in Vietnam, so there are still a lot of work to do. The mission is never finished.
And your mission out there, how's it grow? Is it growing pretty well? How are things going?
Well, it's particular because I am in Vietnam for the Latin Mass, of course, which is not very easy for different reasons. Because, as I said, they have many priests. It's not like in Western countries. So they have a lot of priests in the parishes, in the religious community. But there is no Latin Mass in Vietnam. So I'm the first priest who remained permanently to celebrate the Latin Mass. Now, it's difficult for many reasons because I'm not going to, that's now a public interview, but the political regime of Vietnam, so it's a little bit difficult, even though the situation is better than it used to be in the past. Because 20 years ago, as a priest, I can be there, so it's okay. There is no more persecution for the government. It's not easy, but still the government is in charge. So which means it's not only for us, but for any religious community, Vietnam, we need approbation for the government. It can take many years, maybe 10 years. So. And also among our Catholic brothers in Vietnam, there are some, like in the West, like in other countries, who do not like very much the Latin Mass. So I don't have only friends in Vietnam, so it's kind of difficult situation. But right now, so it's I just started my second year in Vietnam. I arrived just 1 year ago. My first year, I needed to have a place to stay. When I was in Canada, I met a Vietnamese priest, a Vietnamese Cistercian priest who was studying in Ottawa. He was studying in Ottawa and he invited me to visit his monastery in North Vietnam near Ninh Binh. And so I made contact with the monastery. And last year, because I used to visit Vietnam every year from Canada, and last year I was visiting, and I told them, well, my superior, Father Komorowski, the general superior, gave me authorization to go to Vietnam for at least 2 years to see what we can do. So when I told that to the monks in Ninh Binh, they say, oh, well, we need someone that you can teach English and French to the brothers. I said, okay, fine. So I signed, and I came back a few months later. So I spent my first year in the Cistercian monastery to teach for the brothers French and English. But I did not have apostolate. I used to say private mass every day. But I traveled a few times in Vietnam to Hue, the former imperial capital, and to Saigon. And in fact, it happened that it's in Saigon, now they call that Ho Chi Minh City, that I found more people who are interested with the Latin Mass. So I went there a couple of times, celebrate Mass, and finally in June I met the Archbishop of Saigon. And so I told him, I say, I'm priest of the Fraternity of St. Peter, I'd like to stay in Vietnam. And so he told me, well, it's still difficult now to have you stay and to say public Mass. But again, not because it's me and the Fraternity of St. Peter, but again, all the public Mass must have the approbation of the government. It takes time. But the Archbishop told me, I'm not opposed that you stay in Saigon and to take care of young men who may have a vocation to join the Fraternity of St. Peter. So I told my superior, I said, okay, I have a door that is open to be in Saigon. And then I moved, so we rent a home now. And I have a few young men who are interested to join the seminary. So we have a kind of community life. They are not members of the fraternity, but it helps to make a discernment, and maybe hopefully they will join one of our seminary in Big Ratsbad or in Denton in the US. But right now, I still do not have the authorization to celebrate public mass, so I just say celebrate private mass in the oratory. We have a small oratory. So, but I'm again, it will be a work of patience. Even myself, I did not expect that in just 1 year. So it's even more than I expected. Of course, it's a little bit frustrating because after I just celebrate my 20th anniversary, so after 20 years in parish or a big church, we have apostolate with everything, catechism, all the sacraments of parish life we can have. So my apostolate is quite limited here, but I hope that it can be the foundation if we have later vocation from Vietnam. So we have to be patient. And precisely when I was thinking about the mission in the 19th century and all the martyrs, I would say like my cross in comparison is a very small cross. So I don't complain. I do what I can do now, and I hope in the future it will develop. So it's not easy, but it's okay. I'm happy, and I hope to continue, and I hope this apostolate will bear some fruits in the future.
Well, that's like with all of us. I mean, you read these guys; they're hiding in walls or underneath steps and things, and we're trying to and we're afraid to tell our neighbor or our work or our coworker, "Hey, come to mass" or something like this.
Yeah, exactly. So now it's not this situation now. Here, well, it's funny because sometimes I know that I receive some email from people I don't know. They ask, telling me, "Oh, I would like to go to mass. I would like to learn Latin," but I know very well that there are people who don't like us and they want to spy on us. There are some kind of adventure like that. I even received sometime some threat, some message telling me that a few months ago I received a message. You have 3 days to leave Vietnam, otherwise the government will expel you. I say, okay, well, whatever. It makes me laugh. I think they just better. They try to impress or intimidate me, whatever. But again, if I compare with what Jean-Théophane Vénard on the martyr of the 19th century, it's nothing.
Yeah, I mean, you coming from France and all. I mean, you got Noël Pignot. I mean, right at the beginning of the French Revolution, you got martyrs that it'd be like a scroll of yards to roll off of going.
Oh yeah.
So what do you need? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's also for that I named the first house of the fraternity in Asia. It's Saint-Théophane Vénard. So it's Saint-Théophane Vénard house, and because I said, well, we have a beautiful example to follow, and even if it's difficult, our difficulties are not so big in comparison, and we should always keep the joy and the peace of soul, whatever are the difficulties here. So,
yeah, 3 cheers for joy, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So what do you need out there? What can people that are watching send to you? And I got the GoFundMe page that I'll put underneath in the show notes.
Yeah, of course, any helps will be welcome. Since I'm here, I could buy some vestment with the help of some people. I received some vestments. Right now, since maybe in 10 years, we will have a big church with everything. So for now, but we have to pay a rent for the home, for the house, which is around $600, the equivalent of $600 a month. So any helps will be appreciated. It's through my GoFund account, so that's a way to send money here. We need the most important, I think, is that we need some prayers. That basically I think everybody, especially the member of the Confraternity of St. Peter, who may watch this, so still we ask them to pray for the mission of the fraternity. So if you can remember us in your prayers, okay. Some support. Sometimes I receive sometimes some mail from Europe and the US. It's still appreciated because I'm the only fraternity priest in Vietnam. I think the closest fraternity priests are in Australia. And I don't have a chance, especially with the COVID. The borders are still closed. I mean, if I want, I can leave the country, but I don't know when I will be able to come back to Vietnam. So for now, I stay. I wanted to go back to France in July to celebrate my 20th anniversary with my family and some fraternity conference, but I celebrate here with some nice Vietnamese people. Because, yes, I received some crazy message on thread, but most of the Vietnamese people I know are very kind of nice people. So I don't complain about that. So I received a warm welcome from many people, and that's well appreciated. So sometime a little mail say hello, we pray for you. So it's always appreciated.
No, very good. Yes, everybody likes a letter. Well, Father, I'm sorry?
I will try to, in the future, again, we just moved less than 2 months ago in the house. We need to do some installation. Sometimes we have some very unfortunate things, like yesterday evening, we had a flooding in the house. You know, it's still the rain season in Vietnam, and rain season, so sometimes we had some water in the house. But don't worry, I would say to have water in home in the rain season in Vietnam, it's quite normal. You know,
yeah, I saw the video on your Facebook page.
So, but it keeps me busy. Even if I don't have a ministry like I used to have in other countries, I'm still busy with many things to establish a house. But in the future, I would like to make a kind of a newsletter in French and English also for people who follow our apostolate in America and in Europe. But last month, they wrote a nice article about us. You read it probably in the missive, you know, the FSSP blog. So it was a nice, which was good because just this week I received a mail from an American guy who is a supporter of the fraternity and who worked in Saigon. So, and because of the missive, now he knows that we are in Saigon. So I hope to see him at Mass very soon.
Oh, fantastic.
And when the border of Vietnam will be open again, I don't know when. Nobody knows what will happen this crazy year. But I invite all the people to come to travel to Vietnam because it's a very beautiful country. It's open to tourism now, so we have a lot of tourists who come to Vietnam with not always good things. I mean, sometimes they bring the spirit of the world, money. So now a lot of business and so. I mean, people they need to live in Vietnam. I'm glad because 20 years ago the economy was not good. Now the economy is rising, which is good. There are less people in poverty. But also on the other hand, especially among the young people, it's still I would say it's still a religious country if we compare with most of the Western country, mainly Buddhist or whatever, but they are still it's still religious if you compare with the Western countries. But of course, it's a challenge, especially for the young generation. Many young Vietnamese who are in their 20s, especially those who study in Saigon, where they want to be in business. And now you can see that the spirit of the world and capitalism and so forth is growing in Vietnam, and it's not always good. There are good things, but also bad things that come. But anyway, when the borders are open, it's still a very welcoming country. And if some people like to travel to Vietnam to visit, you know that there is a Latin Mass in Saigon, so you are all welcome to visit us.
Now, I know this it's Vietnam, but it's not on target what we're talking about. But wasn't it Nong Dinh Diem? Didn't he? I heard that he went to Mass every morning at 6:30.
Oh yes, interesting life. In fact, he didn't want to be in politics. He wanted to be a Benedictine brother. And in fact, he went to Belgium. He joined what was the name of this? I forget the name, but anyway. And that was basically some people and some member of his family who called him back to lead the country. And yes, during his presidency, he attended Mass daily. And in fact, he was killed after Mass. He was attending Mass in, I think it's the church, St. Francis Xavier Church in Saigon. It was November the 2nd, by the way, so the day of the dead. And he was caught. He was living in church and he was killed. So he was a faithful Catholic, and his nephew was Cardinal Nguyen Van Thuan, who spent 13 years in jail, and then he finished after when he left. When they let him free, John Paul II made him cardinal, and he went to Rome. But very, very beautiful and impressive life. I recommend the book. It has been translated in many languages, so in English also, of course. I use this book. I have it in French. It's always near me. You see, I can show you. The Road of Hope. He wrote that when he was in jail for 13 years. That was interesting because there was a young boy a young Catholic who used to bring some paper every day, from a calendar, little piece of paper, and he wrote some thought and meditation that he gave back to the kids. And after the Christian community shared the thought, and they kept all the notes. Now they make a book, so you have this book translated in many languages, The Road of Hopes, and I use that for my daily meditation. It's very powerful, very beautiful. It's full of hope. It's for that they call that the Road of Hope, because in spite of being in prison for 13 years, while he continued to do his mission as a bishop, he said, I am a bishop. I have to teach my brothers. I have to help them to increase their spiritual life. So it's what he did even in jail. It's a beautiful story.
Awesome. I'll link it below for people to get, and along with the GoFundMe site, so people can support your work and hopefully send them sacramentals, send them rosaries, miraculous medals, holy face medals, and cash. Well, Father, appreciate your time, and thank you for that lesson on the Saint Théophane. That's the feast day in the 62 calendar, I think, is February 2nd, and the new calendar is November 24th. And I know that...
In fact, yes, because the martyr, several martyrs were beatified before under the previous popes. Then all of them were beatified, and John Paul II canonized them. So, of course, it happened John Paul II after 1962 calendar. So in the new calendar, it's November 4th, I think. But in the 1962 calendar, it was in September, so I kept since I follow the 1962 calendar, so we just celebrate the feast of the martyr, not last Sunday, but the week before. It was to be the first Sunday of September. So.
Yeah. Well, I knew about the 24th because my brother's birthday is the 24th, and he went to some. This is the first time I heard about Saint Théophane. He was at some relic show. And when he was in seminary with you guys, and somebody told him, said, one of these saints will speak to you. He said he walked by one, he kind of looked at it, and he just walked by, and he said, something brought me back to it, and I picked it up and had my birthday on it. And it was Saint Théophane. But I appreciate your time, and thank you very much. And please, everybody, help support him with prayers and funding.
My pleasure, always welcome. So God bless you all, and maybe we'll have...
Hey, can we get a final blessing before you go?
Yes, okay. Benedictio Dei omnipotentis, Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti, descendat super vos et maniat semper. Amen. Just to make people sure, it's not Benedictio Orbi et Orbi. I'm not... I can still pray and I invoke the grace of God upon everyone. Thank you for having me in this show, and God bless you, and we pray for each other. All right.
Thank you, Father.
God bless. Bye-bye.